Hello, friends. It is Gina here, and I want to welcome you back to Feminine Roadmap Inspires. And today, my storyteller is Stephanie Thompson. She is the founder and president of adancersheart.org. And she is going to be sharing her story with us today, what a dancer's heart is, why it exists, and what her purpose is in developing that organization. So, Stephanie, I want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Gina. I'm so honored to be here.
Stephanie and I have had a chance to get to know each other and to become friends. And she's also on my podcast. It's episode 124, and it's Overcoming Grief. So today I invited Stephanie back to my platform here on YouTube to share her story of grief and how that led to a mission and a purpose that was bigger and beyond herself, and how many women between the ages of 12 and 22 she has impacted because of the loss in her life. So, Stephanie, please share your story with my audience.
Oh, thank you so much again, and I'm happy to. So it's really appropriate today, the day after, as it would be, that Kobe Bryant and his daughter and 7 other people lost their lives in a tragic accident. So as we speak, people are buzzing and talking about that loss and feeling grief and trying to figure out how to manage. And so I was talking to a friend of mine, and we we're talking about how that triggers our own feelings of grief when we've lost a loved one and what that means to us. And so my story surrounds and starts with my daughter, Imani. And this year, as it would be, it's been 10 years since she passed away. And so I call myself a survivor because when she passed away suddenly at the age of 16, I didn't think I would last 10 minutes, let alone 10 years. But here I am 10 years later, thriving and surviving. And it hasn't been easy. It's still not easy some days. And I'm a realist. And what I've learned about myself and managing my grief is I have to feel it when it happens. And when I feel sad and I embrace it. I just don't stay in that sad place, but I do embrace it. And Gina, honestly, what has blessed me is having a support group, because grief is something that you journey through, not by yourself, but with other people who understand your pain. And over the last 10 years, I've been fortunate to have friends and families and support groups and therapists and anybody else I can talk to kind of help me along the way, because that's what you need to actually make it. So my story begins kind of before Imani passed away. And looking back, hindsight is always 20/20. And I'm thinking as the years go by with Kobe and his daughter, you kind of evolve and see some things that will happen in the way that, God manifests himself in your life. My daughter and I were just like 2 peas in a pod. At the time of her passing, I was a single mom. I was divorced. And so we spent a lot of time together. But she was developing to be a young woman and wanted her own time and space. And so we would do things together, but also to help others. So both of us, we served alongside each other. And what happened was she would say, "Mom, let's go help this group of young women to learn about dance." She was a dancer. And so she would love to go and help teach other young women and young girls how to dance. Or how to knit. So she was always a servant. And I learned so much from her about being a servant and serving others in her young life. About 6 months before she passed away, she was always gone, always busy. And I didn't actually spend a lot of time with her. What I didn't know at the time was God was preparing me to be without her. Only because she was busy in school, at dance, doing student government, volunteering. And so it was time where I saw her grow and blossom. But at the same time, she was becoming a woman and spending more time kind of away from me and not the little girl that I had grown up with. But what happened was she got sick very suddenly. She had a fever. And so this is about a week before she was supposed to go to Georgia's governor's honors 6-week program. So it was for the top 1% of students, high school students in Georgia. And so she's going to spend 6 weeks. It'll be the first time she'd ever been away from me. We'd never been separated for more than a week prior to that time. And so she started developing a fever, still was her normal kind of perky self, a little lethargic. So after a couple of days, fever didn't go away. I took her to the doctor, and the doctor said, oh, she probably just has a low virus. Let her take some Tylenol and she'll sleep it off. So went by 2 more days went by, the fever didn't go away. I took her back to the doctor and I said, you got to find out what's going on. So they took some tests and they said, well, come back next week, which was Monday. This was a Friday, and we'll figure out what the results are. She was supposed to leave for the governor's honors on Sunday. This was Friday. And I said, I'm not comfortable with her not being well and going away. I took her to the emergency room. The emergency room doctors did all kinds of tests. And I remember it so vividly, Gina, to this day. They said, Ms. Thompson, we can't find anything wrong with Imani. So she's approved. I said, all I want to know is she approved to go to governor's honors. They said yes. So they gave her some fluids, gave her some Tylenol. They said if she doesn't feel better on Monday, take her back to her pediatrician. So that was Saturday. We left Sunday to go to governor's honors. Imani was excited and happy to go. We got there, her and her dad and I took her. We left her. It was in Valdosta, about 200 miles from Atlanta, Georgia. And we left her there Sunday. Monday I called her and she's like, Mommy, I went to the infirmary and they gave me some medicine and I feel renewed. I'm not hurting. I don't have a fever. And so I said, Imani, what did they give you? And she said, well, they gave me amoxicillin and a muscle relaxer. And I'm like, I don't know if you should have taken that. Long story short, that was Monday. Monday night, her dad talked to her and she was watching Project Runway. And she's like, Dad, I'm fine. And she hung up. She was a very quick conversation. Tuesday morning at 7:30, the residence director called me and said, Imani has collapsed and you need to get down here. And I said, is she conscious? He said, yes. So that gave me hope. So her dad and I hopped in the car, made the 3-hour drive to Valdosta, Georgia, got there, and Gina, when I got to the emergency room, I could tell that she had a stroke. Like, if you've ever seen anyone who's had a stroke, you know that their mouths are twisted, their hands are knotted up, and I could tell. And I was devastated. And I didn't know what was going on. The doctors didn't know what was going on. And she was going to get another MRI. In the process of getting the MRI, she had another massive stroke, and they decided to airlift her to the University of Florida's Shands Hospital. And I asked, could I go with her on the helicopter? And they said no. So at that point, I collapsed. But so we had to drive to Gainesville from Valdosta. They had surgery, and they told us that if she can wake up and say her name, then we were in a good place. So that was Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. And so Wednesday morning, we went to change clothes and come back, got a call from the doctor, said we need to see you right away. And basically they took us in the small conference rooms. Prior to that, I'd never been involved. I didn't know when they take you into this little small conference room that it's not good news, your doctors. And so they told us, basically his words were, the Imani that you know and love is gone. And I didn't comprehend what he was saying. He was just basically saying 80% of her brain is gone, and you have 2 choices. You can take her to a nursing home with a feeding tube and a breathing tube, or not. She wasn't conscious. She never gained consciousness. And so at that moment, Gina, my whole world changed. And I disagreed with the doctor because I said, the Imani that I know and love is still there. And the love will be there whether she's all there or not. And I asked the doctor what happened because I said, I took her to the doctor. And he said, We took her to the doctor, which is the right thing to do, but the physicians, they heard horses, and this was a zebra. So what they later diagnosed her with was group B strep. Group B strep is different from group A strep, which is what you have in your throat. Group B strep is typically in newborn babies, pregnant women, and old people. And she was in the less than 5% of people who get it, teens who get it. And so we were like, what, how did she get it? What, after she subsequently passed away. And I wanted to know, I wanted answers. And I never got answers. And I contacted the CDC, the infectious disease department, everywhere, Gina, looking for answers to why this group B strep attacked my daughter. How did it attack her? And it's just not that much information known about it in teens. So, it was very hard making the decision that we made, but we made it as a family because the first thing I did was I laid on my face to God and said, God, help me, show me what you want me to do with my daughter. And so that took about a week. I went to the chapel at Shands every day, and I just laid on my face half the day. The other day, half I was in her room holding her hand and talking to her and just telling her that I loved her. That's all I told her. I just said, I love you. I love you. I just repeated it over and over and over because they always say the last thing to go is hearing. And so I just wanted her to know that her mommy loved her. And so about the 5th day, I heard God say to me, my grace is sufficient. My grace is sufficient. And I was trying to interpret at the time what that meant, but it was just my grace is sufficient. And I said, they told us that the only thing that was working was the base of her spine where the breathing is controlled. And so we decided if she could breathe on her own, we would take her back home. And so, a week after she collapsed, we took the breathing tubes out because that would tell us whether or not she could breathe on her own. And she could not. She couldn't. She was not able to breathe on her own. And Gina, up until that point, nobody in my immediate family had ever passed away. I didn't know anything about death, especially of someone so close to me. But I tell you, to see anybody take their last breath in this world is something that you never forget. You never forget that visual. You never forget the sound of that happening. And it's taken me, and even 10 years later, I can still remember it like it was yesterday. And what happened was I realized that when you love somebody and they pass away in your presence, that lives with you throughout eternity. And that's your connection, I believe. So long story short, during the time period where we were trying to make a decision on whether or not, we were going to take her home or not, I decided that I did not want her living to be in vain, and I wanted her to have a legacy because she had, even in her young life, blessed so many other people. And that's when in the hospital, I decided we were going to start a scholarship fund. At that point, I just wanted, a scholarship named after her to bless other young women. And that's how the idea started of doing something beyond her death. And so that is the birth of A Dancer's Heart. About a year after she passed in June of 2010, I started a 501c3. And a lot of my friends were like, you haven't grieved, don't do it right now, just wait. And it was just so strong in my heart that I wanted to start right away. And it was also, quite honestly, part of my healing process.
Mm.
I needed to immerse myself in something that was meaningful and something that honored her life. And she loved ballet. She wanted to be a prima donna, ballet dancer. And so I wanted to help other young girls who had that same dream to accomplish their dreams as well, whatever they wanted to be, whether it was a dancer or a neuroscientist. I wanted to help other young women achieve their dreams in Imani's memory. And so that was the birth of a dancer's heart. And that name kind of came to me in a dream one night, because I was just like, I wanted it to make sense for me, but I wanted to honor things that were important to her as well. And so dance was important to her. And also, she had just an enormous open heart and a heart for people. And as I mentioned earlier, in hindsight, I did learn a lot from her. And we had we built a lifetime of love and fun and experiences in her 16 years. And for that, I am so grateful and thankful to God that I had the opportunity to be this magnificent, wonderful young woman's life. And usually it's the opposite, but I'm her legacy instead of her being my legacy. And so that is how, I think God meant it to be for me to honor her and the work that she did in her young life. And so years after she passed, some of her classmates, and it was really interesting. I used to wonder sometimes what she was doing, staying after school so late. And she was tutoring, but she would say, I'm just having a club meeting or something, but actually she was tutoring people. And I never forget, probably 3 years after she passed away, this young man came up to me at some event, and he said, Ms. Thompson, he said, I just wanted to tell you that if it hadn't been for Imani, I wouldn't have graduated from high school, because I was struggling in math, and she tutored me in math and helped me pass my math exam so that I could graduate from high school. And I was shocked, because I didn't even know she was doing this. And so that was just more fuel for me to continue the work that she started, unbeknownst to me and anybody else. And there are several other stories, that young people have come to me about how Imani befriended them when they were a loner, or when they felt like nobody would be their friend. She was also, she loved people who were different, and they would gravitate to her, and she would befriend them. She would become their champion. And so much so that other people began to accept the persons just because, Imani had accepted them. So she was a true friend, a true confidant, and a true servant. And so what has inspired me, she has inspired me. And quite honestly, a year after she passed, my sister passed away. And then 2 years after that, my brother passed away. And so I've had to learn how to live with a lot of loss and a lot of grief. But her death kind of prepared me for that. So losing a child, to me, is the greatest loss that you can have in life, because it's not the natural order of things. To me, the natural order is, if you're older, you lose the older person, and especially not a child. And one of the questions I had early on for God, and still do, even after yesterday's events, is, why do children have to die? Because they basically have their life ahead of them. Us older people, we've lived the majority of our lives. And I just didn't understand why children have to die. And, as a parent of, and she was my only child too. And I was like, okay, God, I was mad at God for a long time, Gina. I was pretty darn upset with him, just trying to understand the why. And the why in loss is always the major question, because nothing makes sense. You feel so lost. Your mind is trying to grasp, like, why did this happen? Why did this happen to me? Why did this have to happen? And it is such a lost feeling. It's like a tsunami taking over your life, and you're swirling and you're twirling and you're trying to find your base and your foundation, and you can't, because it's so shook that you just don't know what to do. And when you're in that painful place, there is that pain of just losing someone you love so dearly is so indescribable. And I wouldn't, and I used to say this early on, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, this kind of pain, because people are irreplaceable. You know, even though you try to replace people, maybe with other people or with things, food, addiction, shopping, anything crazy, because you're trying to fill up this big hole in your heart, but you can't do it. You can't do it. And what I learned is there's no way around the pain. You have to go through it. There's no way around it. You have to go through it. But in order to go through it, you need help. And that's where, creating this organization came into being, because it helped me feel that hole in my heart with other things that I knew that my daughter would embrace and would love, and also helping and serving other people. So in order to move forward in my grief, I realized that I did need help, support, and a dancer's heart, creating a dancer's heart helped me with that. It helped fill the void that I felt, but also it was empowering to know that I was doing something to honor the legacy, of Imani, and I was also doing something to help other young people. And we had started, one project that we had started that I haven't brought to fruition yet, but I want to, was we wanted to do a mother's daughter getaway, because as teens, sometimes mothers and daughters kind of go in this opposite direction. And because we had such a great relationship, we wanted to bring other teens and moms together, away from their homes, to say, hey, let's bond for a little bit as mothers and daughters, to bring us closer. And she would always laugh with me and say, Mommy, I don't know why I tell you everything. And I was like, I don't either, but I'm so glad you did. But part of that, Gina, I think, was because, and I tell parents that kids only want your time and attention. Imani didn't ride the bus, but I picked her up and I dropped her off at school. I took her to school, and that in the car time is invaluable, because when you pick your child up from school, you can tell by their mood, their facial expressions. Was it a good day? Was it a bad day? And you kind of have some dialogue around what happened. And so I think the time that we spend, especially in those formative years, middle school and high school, is really, really important to still have some of that time together, because otherwise it's very easy for you guys to go in the opposite directions. But anyway, back to my organization. Dancer's Heart, I started in 2011. We launched in 2012. And our mission is to provide scholarship, leadership, and life skill programs for girls and young women. We have had just, phenomenal success. And how we do this and execute it is primarily through scholarships. So we have scholarships that we give to dancers. There's a Imani's Dance School, a Ballet Ethnic Dance Academy, that we do scholarships with every year. And also we partner with her high school, Decatur High School in Decatur, Georgia, and the Decatur Educational Foundation. And we provide graduating high school female senior who embodies the qualities that Imani embodied. We bless them with a scholarship as well. And we also do just really life skill programs. So if you remember back in the 80s and 90s, you would say it takes a village. But so what we determined was, sometimes in managing your teenage years, parents need some help. So we've had workshops and life skill programs on self-esteem, learning to love yourself, learning to be safe. And by that I mean safe meaning social media safe when you go out to parties, when you're a teenager. And so those have been some of our most popular workshops, in addition to learning how to be successful when you go off to college. So it's one thing to get accepted into college. It's another thing in managing that success and making it successfully on the other side and graduating. So we also have workshops around that. One workshop that's coming up in late March for us is trafficking. And knowing the signs for trafficking of young girls is huge. I don't know about your side of the world, but on this side of the country, it is epidemic. And if you know anything about Atlanta, Georgia is a high trafficking place, unfortunately.
I
So
actually met someone on an airplane one time. I was going to a work trip, and she told me, she gave me her card. She said that the Atlanta airport is one of the largest trafficking hubs in the United States.
It is. Unfortunately, it is. And, you know, one of my dear friends is a juvenile court judge. And, you know, we were discussing, like, parents sometimes don't see the signs. And it's not always low income girls that get caught up in this. A lot of times it's middle class young ladies that get caught up in this as well. So we've identified that as an educational opportunity for the community, in terms of educating them on what are the signs to look for, in terms of if you feel like your daughter may be at risk, or your son, because it's not just for females as well. So those are some of the types of programs that we utilize.
So how do you execute these trainings? What way do you do that? Do you go into schools? How do you advertise it? Like, how does that work? How would someone get involved with what you do?
Oh, okay. That's a great question. Typically what we do is we partner with schools, and we partner with dance organizations, because that's our primary audience, are girls basically from 9 to 22. In a lot of our programs, we have older girls who are in college to help bridge the gap, because I'm a mature woman and a lot of my volunteers are mature. So we try to bring along the older young ladies who are in college to help us bridge the gap and communicate more effectively with the younger girls. And so it's like a collaboration between older girls who have an interest in volunteering and giving back, with the younger young ladies. So we basically partner with the local schools and local dance organizations.
Now, you also have a run that you do, right? Every year?
Yes, so our primary fundraiser for these scholarships and these programs is our Love Run. And so we have a Love Run. It's a 5K run, walk, dance, because we feel like a lot of people don't run, some people don't walk, but everybody likes to kind of move their body. So the dance portion is Zumba, yoga, and line dancing. So it's a really fun event that happens in September of every year. This year it'll be September 12th at Decatur High School. And we have people from all over the community to come. We also all about fitness and healthy living and mental health. And so this is our opportunity to have mental health professionals, because, Gina, one of the things, and I didn't mention this, is mental awareness for youth and young people, because the suicide rate among teens is continuing to grow, unfortunately. And also we're learning that the anxiety and depression among even elementary schools is growing as well. So we found that by having mental health professionals available and even having some workshops, it helps parents and it helps students kind of recognize the symptoms and gives them resources and challenges them to go get help. Because sometimes, you know, we as people are very proud, and sometimes it's easier to hide behind where we're not feeling well or we're feeling anxious or depressed, but it's okay. And I'm a big advocate for being open about your feelings. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it could be a bad thing. But I do feel like if you're feeling a certain way, then you need to express how you're feeling, so that it may be a signal that something deeper is wrong, especially among young people. And I've just had so many young people tell me that their parents say, well, you're just in a bad mood, go away, you'll feel better, go to sleep, versus really addressing what the issue is. And the issue a lot of times is they're anxious about their future, schoolwork, the pressure to do well in school, the pressure to achieve, or even if we as parents are under pressure, our kids feel it. And so we have to be aware and attuned that we're not putting undue pressure on them due to our external or internal pressures, our marriages, our jobs, finances, health, whatever it is, all of that filters down to your kids. And that's what we're seeing too. And that is kind of pervasive. So whenever I talk to healthcare professionals, they're always talking about kids who are 8 and 9 years old who don't want to get out of the bed or afraid to go to school because they're just really, really anxious. So we're trying to address some of these problems throughout some of our workshops and just bringing awareness to these issues in places and talks like these.
What a powerful way to create a legacy. I think that the world our children or we grew up in, holy moly, it's like a totally different world, So here you are trying to leave a legacy because of your daughter. And I think it's deepened beyond the grief, right? It's deepened beyond that, and it's become a mission for you.
Oh, absolutely. And that is, I know you've heard or read in the Bible, beauty for ashes. Well, this is my beauty, right? And so circling back to that why, I had to get really, really, really comfortable with not knowing why, not understanding why. And now I'm to the point where it doesn't matter anymore about the why, because at the end of the day, I have hope that I'll see her again. That's my hope, and my hope in Christ, that I'll see her again. And it won't matter at that particular point in time. So my job here is to do whatever I can to impact the lives of others in a positive way. And that becomes my new why. Why are you doing this? It's because I'm impacting people's lives in a positive way. And I think, love is why we exist. And I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't love that little girl so much, that I want to continue that love. Because, when she passed away, Gina, I was like, so what am I going to do with all this love I had for her? What do you do with the love you have for someone when they're no longer there, right? Physically. And I had to put that love into something else. And, a dancer's heart for me is the manifestation of Imani. And that's where that love goes. And that love goes in order to help other young women and hopefully have an impact on their lives. So much so, let me tell you this story. As you know, I also sort of a sublet of a dancer's heart is grief self-care. And I walked out on faith during the holidays, and I launched a blog called Self-Care Grief. And so I did a little short video about managing grief through the holidays. And so one of Imani's friends called me after she saw the video, and she said, Miss Stephanie, I have a friend that I went to college with. She lost her mom, and she's feeling really, really sad. And can you just talk to her? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. I said, I would love to see her and meet her. And she said, she's in Atlanta, so you can. So I met with the young lady. And Gina, when I tell you, it was just such a beautiful manifestation of two people coming together to help pour into each other. She had never really grieved her mom. Her mom died 5 years ago. Oh. And when she was 17 years old, in June, and then after mom passed in June, she went right off to college. And so she was busy in college, but never really grieved her mom. And so we talked about some things that she could do to honor her mom's legacy. I said, you're your mom's legacy. She would be so darn proud of you that you finished college and now you're becoming, you're starting your career and things like that, help me help other people. So she poured into me and I poured into her. And that's what it's all about. It's people coming together, just trying to find love, trying to find answers, trying to find support. And that's why, as I said at the top of this broadcast, that you can't do it alone. It's a very lonely place. And I think, especially when you're grieving someone you love, you put on this mask. And I think we as grieving parents are particularly tortured souls because we live with this big elephant on our back, or this ball on our back, but we have to put on the mask to survive. And even though the pain doesn't go away, we have to move forward in the best way that we can, but it's really, really hard. And but you can do it. It's hard, but you can do it, and it's worth it, because again, you're creating a legacy of the one that you lost. And I think I mentioned to this when we spoke before, I always hear Imani in my ear, like, Mommy, you can do this. You can go forward. You can move forward. You can do it. And that is what keeps me going too. But at the end of the day, Gina, it's about the love, the love that we have for each other, the love we had for our loved one. And for me, I just keep that in the forefront of my mind. It's the manifestation of how much I love this person. And I want it to be a positive memory, and I want it to be an impactful memory long after I'm gone, because, her life should not have been in vain, and it won't be in vain, as any of our lives are. You think about Kobe and little Gigi, and I think, that'll inspire so many dads and daughters to do some things together, and it's tragic and it's sad, but it's some good that's going to come out of it. I just know it in my heart. It's some good that's going to come out of this horrific tragedy, and people are going to be blessed by it. And I don't know how that's going to manifest itself today, but I just feel in my heart that, something really, really powerful and good is going to come out of this tragic loss, as it does with, to me, all losses, if we're intentional about it. And that's what has inspired me and other parents. I'm not the only parent who has been inspired to do something wonderful in their child's memory. It's thousands of parents who do this every day. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And I'd much rather do this than sit in a corner somewhere. It's not like that I haven't sat in a corner crying, because believe me, I have. But again, it goes to honor her legacy, and the legacy of others too. I also honor the legacies of other ones who I've loved and died with a dancer's heart.
Yeah. We were talking before we hit record that, tragedies like, Kobe and his daughter and that other family, a whole family gone, people pass every day, and grief is a part of the life that we live. Some people, like the Bryant family, are going to have to share it with the world, which is a whole nother level of grieving, when you can't turn on the TV or open social media without seeing the people that you love being talked about, luckily in a positive way. But it sounds to me like grief is a process. It's a journey. It's not a straight line. It's really a leaning in. And you said earlier that you just need to not deny the feelings, but allow them to come and not get stuck. Is that right?
Yeah, yes. I think that what you need to do, or what I do, I won't say what people need to do, because grieving, what I do know is grieving is different for everybody. Nobody's grief journey is the same. And so how I manage my grief may be different from how you manage your grief. I can only speak to how I've been able to maneuver through this journey, as you call it, which it is a journey, and it's a journey that will last till I pass away. I mean, because that's the way it is. You never stop missing, and I call it the missing, because you just miss that person's spot in your life. You miss the times that you shared, the life that you shared, and that just doesn't go away because they're no longer here. And you just have to adjust to this new normal that I usually hate that word, but the new normal in your life. And so, and for me, it's like I go to safe places. Like if I'm feeling kind of down on a day, I have friends that I can call and like, you know what, I'm really missing my girl today. Or I do things that were her favorite things. Like she used to love Dreamgirls, the movie. So I'll watch Dreamgirls, and that'll bring me back to this warm space in my heart, because I knew that was something that we shared together. And so you have to do what works for you. But I think the most powerful thing is acknowledging that you feel that way. And I do truly believe it's okay to acknowledge that, you're not okay today, or you're feeling sad today, or you're feeling kind of out of it today, because that's how you feel. And if you have people around you who support you and are understanding, you're going to get through it. And you kind of maneuver and you figure out how to manage your grief, but it's personal to you. But again, I'm a huge advocate of therapy. If you can get it and access it, there's no shame in saying, I need help in managing these feelings, managing these emotions. I feel like it's getting a little scary. So, I really am an advocate for that. And the right support groups. For me, I don't go to grief support groups that are not specific to people who have lost children or siblings. The general support groups don't work for me. They may work for other people, but I need something specific so that I can get the specific support that works for me in my particular situation.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Stephanie, again, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story and for making a difference in the world and using your grief in such a constructive and beneficial way. I really honor you for that journey. I know it must have been very, very difficult.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you for what you do and spreading the word and inspiring other people to share their stories. Because if you don't share your story, there is definitely somebody out there that can utilize, what we're sharing today, utilize the wisdom throughout your podcast. And so thank you for having a forum where this is available to others and to share and impact the world as you do and the community as you do. So thank you for the opportunity. You're a blessing.
Oh, thank you. It is totally my joy. I just love the way that people come into my path. And that's something that I would like to say before we wrap up is, don't discount the story that you have, your own experience. The people who are listening, there's value in what you're experiencing. And even if you only tell one person, share your story, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So today I've been talking with Stephanie, and if you click down below the show notes, I will have links to adancersheart.org, and you can connect with Stephanie if there's some way you want to get involved with her organization, maybe even an extension of the organization in another community. Please take the time to connect with her. And remember that you are not alone. There is always someone out there who can help you navigate the challenge and the change that you're going through in your life. And grief comes into all of our lives, my friends. Don't buckle underneath it. Find the resources that you need to make it through in a way that feels good for you. And if something comes up for you to share that grief in a powerful way, like a dancer's heart, we encourage you. Navigate it with a sense of purpose, because into all of our lives a little rain must fall, but this too shall pass, my friends, especially in community. So thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to sharing more inspirational stories with you in the years to come. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.